Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is Vie Creative, the podcast. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway.
Welcome back to Paris History Avec Hemingway, and today we are talking about the Hotel de Ville, but not just the Hotel de Ville. We're going to take you on a walk all the way down to Place de la Concorde. So you guys may be enjoying these newer episodes because it's like you're taking a walk in Paris without actually coming here. So I'm going to let Claudine take it from here.
Yeah, and then you could even take this one with you and have your own little walk along this one we kind of zigzag down.
Yeah,
so we're going to cover a lot.
I love it.
Yeah, but this one starts at the beautiful Hotel de Ville, which is for some people their favorite building in all of Paris. It is a neo-Renaissance in style, and it's a second version of the building, which we kind of teased at the end of last week's recording. It was the site of the mayor of Paris since 1357. It would stand until 1589. Francois Premier wanted a more Renaissance looking building. He was obsessed with everything about the Renaissance because his mother was obsessed with the Italian Renaissance. From 1535 to 1551, construction on the south side of it, that's the closest to the Seine, was created. It was being built until the Wars of Religion put a pause on it. Henry IV took it up again in 1605, and then Louis XIII in 1628. Inside, it once had some paintings by, you guessed it, my favorite, Delacroix. I don't think I even mentioned Delacroix last week. But Nope. We'll make up for it today. So inside the paint, there was the ceilings and just these amazing frescoes done by both Delacroix and Ingres. On May 24th, 1871, the communards arrived at the Place de Grève, which is now the Place de Hotel de Ville, and set fire to it, burning it for days. There was more things, I think, destroyed in that week, the Bloody Week, they call it, in Paris than during the Revolution.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, they just destroyed their own city and a lot of beautiful things in the making.
I know, and it just kills me. I would have loved to those Delacroix and the Ingres. Like, there's some sketches left of what those things look like, but of course we lost everything. A year after that, it was rebuilt from the original plans. And so what you see today is very much like what the original one was actually smaller. But on the facade of it, what I love to go do, and I did this years and years ago on a Sunday morning, and it took me like 3 hours to go around the entire building. And I made like a little map and wrote down all of the names of the people on the facade of the building because I'm such a nerd. And I thought, I'm going to do a whole thing and write the story about each one of these people. It's never happened. But it is really cool because there's 338 statues of famous French men. And guess what? Some women on there, some of which we've actually even talked about on the podcast. But most of these, like at the Louvre in the courtyard, you've got the 86 famous men in French history. There's no women, but on the Hotel de Ville, there's some women up there. You could find some of the ruins of the original Hotel de Ville we've talked about many times in the Parc Monceau, the Trocadero, and in the Square Pont Langevin, which we're going to talk about in a couple weeks. That is near the Musée de Carnavalet. Right to the left of the Hotel de Ville, you see a huge department store, and what we call it BHV. It was actually, the long name is the Bazaar de l'Hôtel de Ville. It was started and created by Xavier Rouet, who was born in 1822. He came to Paris from Lyon and found a little corner on the Rue de Rivoli and then decided to just set up a tiny little stall selling knitted goods like gloves and sweaters. In 1856, he created a store right there on that spot. Over time, he added more and more buildings and ended up purchasing and holding 5 addresses right there on that street. In 1891, he died, and in 1900, his grandson took over. And in 1912, the famous dome, when you look up, you could see was added on. There's also a rooftop bar there.
Love a good rooftop bar.
But that, I mean, you have that. We also have the Samaritan close by. So you have these like, almost mythical department stores, but the Bon Marché, those are kind of, well, and Galerie Lafayette, I was gonna say, and Prud'homme. You've got like these 5 major department stores that are, rebuilt now and kind of in all their former glory that have this long, amazing history in Paris, which is really cool. We're going to walk over and walk on down. There's the Avenue Victoria, which was named for Queen Victoria of England in memory of her visit to the Hotel de Ville in 1855. And then there's, go a little farther, and there is what is known as the Square Saint-Jacques, which has a very, very tall tower in the center of it, which you could really spot from a lot of places in Paris because it's very tall for that part of the city. It was once the site of the Église Saint-Jacques, La Boucherie. It was built at the end of the 11th century. The bell tower was constructed in 1509 in flamboyant Gothic style. On April 30th, 1797, the church was destroyed, leaving only the bell tower. Much of the area surrounding it was also destroyed and rebuilt by housemen. Part of the original church was financed by Nicolas Flamel. Some people know that name from Harry Potter. He was later buried here. His stone marker is on view at the Hotel de Cluny, but his bones are now in the catacombs, so we don't know where he is.
What? He's just dumped down there with the rest of them?
Dumped down there. We're going to talk about the catacombs here, in maybe next month. So we have that's on the docket to tell the story of the catacombs, which is kind of cool, which I still have yet to go down because remember last week, I'm too afraid of rodents. Yeah. Inside, there is a plaque and a stone engraving in the park to Gerard de Nerval. He killed himself at the Place du Châtelet, which was near there. And he was we brought his name up a lot, one of the very first live walks that we did up there, very close to where you are for the Folie Saint-Denis, because he lived there for a short period of time. But the Tour Saint-Jacques is really cool. And during the summer months, up until I think mid-September, you could actually walk all the way to the top and get an amazing view over the city. It is also kind of the unofficial beginning of I always forget the name, the Compostela. Is that the right name? The walk that, that they call the way that walks all the way down into Spain.
Yeah. It's I always forget it too. We know someone who just did a tour of it. You're supposed to have like a spiritual experience.
Yeah, it's supposed to be amazing. If I didn't have such an aversion to like outdoors and camping, I would maybe do it.
We met a guy who became a priest after walking it. He was an architect getting ready to marry a woman. So things happen on that route, guys.
No, I hear that it literally is like life-changing. Like it is the most, and there was actually, I read a book about it, and then I saw this movie that Emilio Estevez wrote, and he wrote it. It spent a long time writing this book. And it starred him at the beginning, and then it also had his real life dad, Martin Sheen, in it. And he, like Emilio Estevez's character, dies, and then Martin Sheen's like, I'm going to go, he wanted to do this thing. I'm going to go do it. It's really, really interesting. I would love to do it. And I hear that there's ways you could do it where somebody packs up your, they carry your stuff to the next hotel.
Glamping.
Yeah, it'd be maybe more glamping. But right across from there, just around the corner, is the Place du Châtelet. We all know the Châtelet as the nightmare of a metro stop. That's where most people are going to know that name, which I do everything I possibly can to avoid going anywhere near it, just because it is massive and it's a rite of passage to get lost in there at least one time when you're in Paris. But the Place du Châtelet is closer to the Seine. It was a site of the former Grand Châtelet by Louis VI and served as a jail. It was also the site of the first morgue of Paris. Molière was jailed here. It was demolished in 1802. In 1806, it was created as a Place du Châtelet, and Napoleon commissioned this palm tree fountain to commemorate his many victories. It was finished in 1808. It is a very tall column in gold, and at the very top, it is the allegory of victory is up there. It is stopped by the copy. The original is now in the Musée de Carnavalet, but the top of it is now a bronze copy of it. She's holding laurel wreath crowns. And in 1858, the statue in the column had to be moved 40 feet to the west. And I've seen some really old drawings of it, and they literally had to figure out a way to lift this thing up and put rollers underneath it and just rolled it 40 feet, which I just don't even understand how they did that.
Not at all.
Because it's massive. It's huge.
Yeah.
And our star of last week's episode, at the right there across the way, the Théâtre de la Ville, was constructed by Haussmann. It was built in 1868. In 1898, it was known as the Théâtre de Sarah Bernhardt. She took it over, had it fully restored, and in the interior, where all of it has all this beautiful red velvet, it's still there to this day. She had a amazing, when we talked about this when we did the episode about her, like, oh my gosh, I guess it's 2 years ago. She had a huge bathtub installed in the middle of her dressing room, so when people came to visit her, she could still have time to take a bath.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
I know. I mean, it's just welcome, and hopefully there's lots of bubbles. We're going to cross the bridge over for a moment. We're going to head over through the Ile de la Cité off the Pont au Change. It was replaced. It replaced a 9th century bridge that was destroyed after the floods in 1196. In 1206 and 1280, it was replaced again, and finally in 1296, when it was swept away down the Seine, another replacement had to be put in there. The current bridge dates back to 1860. It was built by Napoleon III. It's marked with N's on the outside of it. But most of the times when you see the N's, a lot of times they think Napoleon, as in Napoleon Bonaparte, but they're all Napoleon III. It gets its name for being a site where a lot of the money changers used to be. This was also set up with jewelers and goldsmiths. As we know, we're going to talk about the oldest bridge in Paris pretty soon. But all these bridges, like, when you go to Italy and you go to Florence and the Ponte Vecchio that has all the buildings on it, that's how most of the bridges of Paris at one time were. So it wasn't like just guys standing on the side of the street going, hey, do you have change for a 20? It was like actual like stores and buildings, and goldsmiths were located there. The Ile de la Cité is the ancient site of Lutetia, and it's the beginning of where Paris first started and was founded. If you go down a ways, just right along the Seine there, you're going to see the Conciergerie. It is the former Palais de la Cité. It was built under Clovis the First. This was the first palace of the kings from the 6th century to the 14th century. In 1242, Louis IX had Sainte-Chapelle built during to hold all of his. He went down, and got the relics of Christ, including the crown of thorns and a bunch of other pieces, and needed somewhere to hold these. So it cost him less money to actually build Sainte-Chapelle than it did for him to buy all these relics. And when you see Sainte-Chapelle, you would be amazed by that, because it is stunning. It is known as the jewel box because inside it is all stained glass. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, if you haven't gone, you have to go. It's definitely worth it.
Yeah, and go when you could go in there for concerts, like, classical concerts. It's just amazing. And at Christmas, if you're going at Christmas time, go check it out. It was changed into a prison in 1810 during the Revolution. It ended up becoming it was known as the Antechamber of Death. It was formerly, it was officially a prison, but during that time, it was the courthouse, because it's also where the courthouse is still today. A lot of the courthouse was moved out to the edge of the city, but they still have the courthouse. It was just recently where they had, I think, was the 7-8 month trial for the lone surviving terrorist of the 2015 terrorist attacks. And that was it got to a point where you couldn't even cross Ile de la Cité. But it was known as the antechamber of death. It was a final stop before the guillotine. Marie Antoinette in 1793, she was there. The Countess du Barry, Charlotte Corday, who killed Marat, they all passed through those doors on their way to their death. The street that runs right next to it, that's over the Seine, is the Quai d'Horloge. It's named after the clock that hangs on the corner of the Conciergerie. It is the oldest clock in Paris. Charles V had it commissioned, but Henry II had it redone and added to, but the functioning parts of the clock still are the original ones. So it is the oldest working clock that is still worked till this day in Paris.
That's wild.
And it's really, really pretty. It's got, gold, and it has these two figures representing law and justice. It has the initials of both Henry II and Henry IV on there as well. Poor Charles V, who had it created, he just got kicked off of it. But if you walk around the side of the building, you come back around the back side of it, which is, I would love to be able to see the back to get into that side of the Palais de Justice. But there is a little tiny triangle park that is called the Place Dauphine. It is absolutely lovely, and it's one of the best places to visit in Paris. It's changed a lot with COVID. There's a lot of restaurants in there, so there's a little triangular park in the center. The city let all those restaurants use all of that space to put tables. So it used to be kind of like there's people playing pétanque, and you could sit there on a bench, and now it's like all of the restaurants just kind of morphed out into it. So it changed it a little bit, but it's still really lovely. When the Pont Neuf was built in 1578, it adjoined 3 smaller islands that make up Ile de la Cité. Henry the Fourth gave the land to his faithful servant Achilles de Harlay, and was tasked to build the houses surrounding the triangle. The only one that's actually still original are the ones that actually face the statue of Henry IV at the end of the Pont Neuf. Ville-le-Duc had the backside demolished when they ended up adding on to the Palais de Justice. It was named after the future king, Louis XIII, who was the Dauphin. And for a long time, I was like, well, if it's a Dauphin, why is it called Place Dauphine? Because Dauphine is feminine, but it'd be a place is feminine. So that's why the French language now makes it Place Dauphine.
So complicated.
I know, it's so complicated. But the Pont Neuf itself, a lot of people, there's 3 bridges. And if you ask people what their favorite bridge, it's either Pont Neuf, Pont Alexander III, or my favorite, Pont des Arts. But Pont Neuf is always up there. Henry III laid the first stone for the Pont Neuf in 1578. Building didn't start on until 1599 by Henry IV. It was finished in 1606. It is now the widest bridge and the first bridge in Paris that does not have houses on it. Pont Neuf means new bridge. It's now technically the oldest bridge. Marie de Medici had a statue built, but it didn't get finished until after her husband died. It was built in Italy, and when it was finished, it was set out on a boat to come up to Paris, but it sank off of the coast of Italy when it was attacked by pirates.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Every time whenever I see the word pirate, I just think of Pirates of the Caribbean.
That's so funny.
Yeah. It was off the coast of Sardinia. Months later, it was discovered. It was pulled back out in 1614, which I don't even know. How do you even do that in 1614? It was rescued out of the water. It was put back onto another boat and brought up to Paris from Le Havre and down the Seine. Originally, it was surrounded by 4 captives that you can now find in the Louvre, and I'll put a picture of those on my website. The original was destroyed during the Revolution. Louis XVIII ordered a new one, and in 1818, Henri IV sat again up there at the very top. But they ended up having, when they cleaned it up and they were getting it all just over time, it's bronze, but these things take a beating in the elements. They ended up opening it up to clean it and everything. And I've thought something like this was solid. And so you could actually see pieces of it. The Musée de Carnavalet, you could see what it originally looked like. But they ended up opening up, and inside they found these metal cylinders that were filled with pamphlets from the Bonapartes. So they were basically people that supported, Napoleon and Napoleon III. These cylinders were stuck in his neck and his arm. In 2004 was when they were found during a renovation. Before it was just a myth, but now you've actually could see images of these things that were on there. And then they ended up putting them back in the cylinders and putting them back in the statue, which I love.
We brought it back together.
Yeah, but they do have pieces of the original where they have in the Musée de Carnavalet, and they have like the horse's leg, they have his foot, and it's really interesting because if you look at it from the side, you can see what it's like inside. So basically it's just kind of a bronze shell on the outside. So because if it was solid bronze, the thing is really big. It would be so incredibly heavy. But it's really interesting to see kind of the inner workings of it. And I love that. Henry IV he has one of the most distinctive faces that anytime you see him in art or in a statue or anything, you always know it's him. He always kind of has this pointy chin. He was known as the Vert Galant. And so, because he had his way with the ladies, and we've talked about his love of his life, Gabrielle d'Astries. We've also, of course, his wife, Marie de Medici. But he had quite the way with the ladies. And when you see him in my favorite painting of his in the Louvre, where he is actually painted in the form of Hercules, he's wearing like this little silvery kicky skirt thing, and he's got like the greatest legs you've seen in a painting. So I totally see it. And every time I take people in there, I show them, nobody ever seems to be quite as impressed as I am.
Like, what's up with Claudine?
I know. I think they think I'm crazy. I'm like, come on, look at his legs.
Great legs.
Yeah. But we'll cross back over to the right bank off of the Pont Neuf. When you look straight up, you see the Saint-Martin. And we will go on, take a left on the Quai du Louvre. It was, of course, named after my favorite place, the Louvre. This is where Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI ran on that night that they went to escape, their attempted escape to grab their very fancy caravan to leave Paris was just right here. We'll take a right on what is the Rue de l'Amiral Coligny. It was named for Gaspard II de Coligny. He was a Huguenot. He was a great enemy of Catherine de Medici. He was almost killed just days after the wedding of Henry IV and Margaret. They tried again, and this time it was successful, and was also the triggering moment of the St. Bartholomew Day massacre that happened right there at that spot. So we talked about St. Bartholomew Day massacre when we talked about Catherine, and we'll link that. But at that time, the marriage of Henry IV to Marguerite de Valois, who was the daughter of Catherine de Medici, they put it in place that the wedding had to occur by this specific date. And because his mother was a huge leader of the Huguenots of France, the Protestants. And so they said they did this so that all these Protestants would be coming up to Paris for the wedding. And so at midnight, this one night, the bells rang out, and that meant to go, and basically they'd go into these homes and inside the Louvre and all of these places, pulling these Protestants out of their bed and killing them. They said that the Seine actually ran red from all of the killings.
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah. Sorry if you're listening to this in the morning.
Enjoy your coffee.
I know our favorite Carrie in London. I think she's always listening to this in the morning. So sorry, Carrie. But there is a statue of him on the backside, the Hôtel du Louvre, which is the church that's there around the corner from the Louvre. But right across is a really amazing church, which is the Église Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois. It's the entire district is covered, actually is known as Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois. It goes all the way from the Tuileries down to Saint-Chapelle. The church became the church of the Valois family when they moved back into the Louvre in the 14th century. The oldest part is a Romanesque tower that's from the 1100s. The rest of the church, is much newer, from the 1400s. It was the bells of the church, as I said, that rang out on that night of August 23rd, 1572, that started the massacre. It was also right here with Saint-Geneviève, gathered everybody to pray to keep Attila the Hun away, just right down there on the banks of the Seine. Haussmann saved this. He wanted to, Emperor Napoleon III actually wanted to destroy the church, but Haussmann decided they needed to save it. Today, it holds the many celebrations that would normally be in Notre Dame de Paris, including the viewing of the Crown of Thorns, which is always on Good Friday, and also the first Friday of the month. And I went there to go see it on Good Friday, and I just was trying to be very respectful, but I wanted to take pictures of it because it was pretty cool to see, and I got in big trouble and they kicked me out.
Oh my God, they kicked you out?
Yeah, the guy was I was being very respectful, but there was like a whole film crew there at the same time. This guy had this whole contraption they wore on his back, and like the actual camera, like movie camera, hung above his head, and there was people coming up. You used to be able to walk up to the Crown of Thorns because it's in this really beautiful crystal and gold, encasement, and people would walk up to and actually kiss it. And since COVID, they don't want you to do that, but people were going up there and like kneeling and having a prayer to the Crown of Thorns, and the guy with the camera was like literally right there in their face, and I was off to the corner being very quiet and very respectful and very discreet, and I got in trouble.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Well, I guess that guy had approval to do that.
Yeah. But I was like, come on. I was like, I'm not going up and filming people. I was actually just getting a picture of like the actual Crown of Thorns and stuff. But, and I didn't go up to it. I was off to the side, but I'll try again.
Such
I'll
a
go in a disguise this time.
troublemaker.
No, I was like, I'm always very respectful in churches. Like, if people are praying, I'm not taking photos. I was like, this is kind of like, this is a major thing though.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool to see. It was pretty amazing to see.
Okay. You should take
but around but right next to that is actually one of my favorite restaurants, Le Fumar. It's got these kind of mustard yellow awnings on it, and it's really fantastic. I've eaten there dozens and dozens of times. It's always really good. But if we go down, go down a little bit, take a left on the Rue de Rivoli. We are on the backside of the Louvre right now. And as you go down the Rue de Rivoli, look to the right, and there is the Orateur de Louvre, which I mentioned. It was another Medici, Marie de Medici, that she instigated having this building done in 1612. It was finished in 1623. It became the state royal chapel for a period of time. In 1624, Louis the 13th also had his funeral there. Also his mother, Anne of Austria, and Marie Therese, who was the wife of Louis the 14th. They were all had their funeral there. It was partially rebuilt in 1740 and incorporated parts of the original church. It's very small. It is not open very often for you to go into. I had to, basically there was one Sunday that it was going to be open, and I had to like race to get over there in time to get inside and see. And there's nothing really fantastic and amazing and remarkable about the inside. It's very small and rather plain, but it was pretty cool to finally get to go inside.
You know all the best secrets.
Yeah. So right there, the Rue de Rivoli, the very long street that runs through Paris, it was named for Napoleon's Battle of the Rivoli that he won in 1797. He was the one who commissioned having this road built. It was in northern Italy against the Austrians. Napoleon decreed it to be built in 1801 and tapped his architect Fontaine and Percier to do it. It was originally very, very narrow. And in 1804, many structures and gardens were destroyed to create it and make it a tiny bit wider. On your left is, of course, the Louvre. At the very back is the Pavillon de Sully, which was mostly constructed at the very backside by Louis the 13th and Louis the 14th. There's the Richelieu wing that was named for the Cardinal Richelieu, who was the cardinal under Louis the 13th and partially Louis the 14th. That was mostly done under Napoleon III, including the library that was once there, which was destroyed in a fire in 1871. The Louvre completely remained unscathed during the revolution because that's when it was open as a museum to the people. And I think that's what saved it, because it was given back to the people instead of being a monument to the monarchy. But the commune got part of it. On that side too is the Jardin de l'Auteur, which is also a little tiny garden, which they just finished doing some work on it. But as you go down, you have all the other different pavilions, the bigger parts of the building that kind of rise up. Those were mostly all done starting back from the Sully wing by Louis the 13th, Louis the 14th, and then all the way by Napoleon the Third. And on that side, you have a lot of the French sculptures and also the objets d'art, which I also love, which have been closed for years now. I'm hoping it's going to reopen soon. But we go across and you go to the right and you will see the Palais Royal, the Conseil d'Etat, which is originally the site of where the Hotel de Rambouillet started in 1624. It was torn down, and this is where the Palais Cardinal was built. And it was closed because it was close to the king and to Louis the 14th. The Palais Royal, which we've talked about before, is of course fantastic and amazing. And the Place Colette that's there, and also where it is La Numore. The Comédie Française on the right dates back to 1786 by Victor Louis. The Theatre Palais Royal first opened. The first play was on May 15th, 1790, which is where Moliere had his theater. There was a huge fire there that destroyed a lot of it. So what we see was much newer. But we head on down right there. That street that begins is Saint-Honoré. Saint-Honoré was the patron saint of bakers. He was born in the 6th century. That's why there's that delicious pastry called Saint-Honoré. He wanted to be a bishop from a very young age, and he told his nanny while she was making bread, and she laughed and said she would be a plant would grow from her peel, which is the huge baker kind of spatula that they use to put in and out of the oven. He said that she goes, a plant and flowers would grow from this before you would become a bishop. And the next day they left it in the garden and a mulberry tree grew from it.
What?
Yeah, so he is Saint-Honoré. It was a very wealthy banker in the 1200s and owned much of the land here and had a church built dedicated to the saint. The church and the cloister spread across the area to the Palais Royal. And today it's lined with some of the chicest shops in all of Paris. Going all the way down, another church you will pass is the church, the Église Saint-Roch. It was built in 1653 to 1722. It's named after the patron saint of plagues and bachelors and dogs.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So he is always, you always know it's Saint-Roch because he usually is holding up his clothes to show his thigh, because it was when the plague was spreading through Italy and the Black Death from 1347 to 1349, and because he ended up being infected by it, and everybody believed that he fought the plague, and so they thought that if they prayed to him they would also survive. So that's why you always see the image of him holding up his leg pointing to his thigh. The original church was built in 1521 under Louis the 14th and Anne of Austria. She laid the first stone there as well. The first stone of the current church was laid in 1653 by Anne of Austria, and it was the first church was dedicated to Saint Suzanne, who has a marker inside the church. But it's a really cool church inside. It's got some really amazing art. On the outside of it, you might notice some marks, excuse me. And in 1795, on October 5th, Napoleon, who was just a general at the time, basically got into a fight with the revolutionists and the royalists and peppered the side of the building with buckshot. So you see all these markers on the outside of the building that were done basically by the order of Napoleon, and they're still there.
What? So many bullet holes in Paris.
There's so many, and I do love that they leave them there. I mean, it's kind of cool that they leave that, because it's all just like living history. It is also where André Lenotre is buried there, and Jean-Honoré Fragonard, the famous painter, and Pierre Corneille, who was a playwright. They are all buried there. But inside the chapel of the baptism is a painting by Théodore Chassereau, who I love because he was friends with and inspired by Delacroix. So there's some really, really amazing paintings when you go down inside there. If we continue down the street, you will see you start getting closer and closer to all of the fancy stores. You go past Place Vendôme, which is of course on the corner is the Louis Vuitton store. But if you keep going down all the way down to number 261, which now is a Dior store, it's on the corner of Rue Cambon. This is where there was a cafe called the Café Voisin. On Christmas of 1870, during the siege of Paris, they served an interesting menu on that Christmas night that include food that was from the Jardin des Plantes. And on the menu was everything from camel to kangaroo to rats and to even elephants from the zoo.
Ew, that's horrible.
I know, gross. The Rue Cambon is right there. It was named for Pierre-Joseph Cambon, who was a campus dealer from the south of France, and he became a member of the Committee for Safety and voted for the death of Louis XVI. He was involved in the fall of Robespierre and was forced to flee Belgium before, so he wouldn't get killed. This is also Rue Cambon. People mostly know that because of the store of She Who Shall Not Be Named is. But also on that corner at number 19, it's another one of my favorite artists, Hubert Robert. He died there in 1808. I love him. He does all of these amazing architectural paintings, a lot of them of the Louvre and also of Italy. There is a teeny tiny church that's right there. It's called the Notre Dame de l'Assomption. It is at the Place Maurice Barrier, who was a politician. This small church has a little rotund, it's very on the top. It's a Polish church. It's also the church where Chopin was when he first arrived. It's in Baroque style, and during the Revolution, it served as barracks for the soldiers. And this also right across the street from there, where my favorite, Christian Louboutin now is where the home of Robespierre was when he, that's where he lived up into the time where he was killed by his beheading. We end up towards going, if you go from here, you walk out to the Place de la Concorde, which of course everybody knows. The guillotine was here, and it had went back and forth many times. It was known as Place Louis XV until the Revolution. It was really spearheaded by Madame de Pompadour to have it built. It changed to the Place de la Révolution, and the site became the site of a lot of bloodshed. On August 11th, 1792, the day of the abolition of the monarchy, Louis XV the statue was torn down from the pedestal and replaced with a Statue of Liberty, not referring to the one that we have. She had a red cap on it until 1800. The guillotine was moved to the Place de la Concorde in 1792, and 2,500 people lost their heads, including, of course, Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI and Madame du Barry.
Such a terrible time in Paris. So many hauntings for sure.
Terrible. In 1795, it was renamed the Place de la Concorde. And when you go out there, of course, you have the obelisk, but then you also have the two fountains that I love. They were created from 1836 to 1846 by architect Jacques-Ignace Itoff, who was commissioned by Louis Philippe to recreate these two design these fountains. On the south side, it is a fountain of the sea, and on the north side is the fountain of the rivers. Surrounding it are 8 statues surrounding the Place de la Concorde, and there's quite a few different ones. They are the 8 statues in the major cities of France at the time. There's Brest and Rouen. Where the Rouen was, there's a plaque right in front of the obelisk that says, in this point, this is where, basically the guillotine was. And but it's actually, if you look over there to the right towards the Crillon, where the statue of Rouen, that is where the guillotine actually was. There's also Lille, Strasbourg, Lyon, Marseille, Bordeaux, and Nantes. The one of Victor Hugo's mistress, Juliette Drouot, is the one of Strasbourg. But it's really cool. Of course, there's the obelisk, which we'll tell you about another time, because we're going to do one sometime soon all about Egyptian art in Paris.
Well, I can't wait for that. And make sure you guys head over to ClaudineHemingway.com for more information on all of this, and tune in next week.
Thank you for listening to Paris History Avec a Hemingway. If you want to find out some more, you could always find me on my Instagram page, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and that's BLEU, as in the French way to spell it. And each day I post a daily history lesson about a person or a place or something in Paris, or it's
lots of fun facts. And then also at claudinehemingway.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter there.